welcome to the Agape Experience, where we inspire growth, healing, and authentic living. I am your host, Siobhan, and I welcome you to this sacred space. Welcome back, Love Tribe, and welcome first-time viewers. This is the first episode of the Bloom series, the first official episode. I thank you for your patience as we had a delay last week that I had to push it back. However, preparing for the baby shower and family coming in, it was just too much. Instead of stressing myself out and trying to make it happen, I decided to go with the flow and just push it back a week. So here we are, and I welcome you and I thank you for showing up, and let's dive right on in. So as we discussed in the first video, the first thing that it takes to have healthy, thriving garden and or plants is soil. Soil is the foundation upon which the seed is planted in. It needs to be nutrient rich. It has to be healthy to provide the necessary minerals and vitamins for the seed to root and grow. So I felt like this was perfectly aligned with spiritual wellness. Spiritual wellness is our soil. It is the foundation upon how we travel through our journey, how we experience life, perceptions. It helps with our perseverance. It's the foundation of life. It's how we experience and or see God or spirit, however you identify with that energy, something greater than you, right? So soil has to be nutrient, essentially nurtures the seed to give it a strong foundation to plant its roots, to grow up out of the soil and to withstand everything that comes at it, right? So the stronger the roots, the longer the plant lasts. It's the same thing with our spiritual wellness. If we decide to put in the effort and the work to nurture our spiritual practices and practice our spiritual practices and nurture our spiritual wellness, we then have stronger roots so that when life happens, we're not easily swayed or knocked down, right? So according to the American Association of Equine Practitioners, spiritual awareness is the expansive process of living each day at work and at home in alignment with a sense of purpose and deeply held values. And I wanted to define that because we hear spiritual wellness and spiritual awareness or spiritual practices, and we don't really, a lot of times people don't necessarily know what that means. So your spiritual awareness, practice, wellness is your daily habits that are aligned with what is most valuable and important to you in your personal journey. So when you look at it that way, you can look at somebody else and their spiritual practice may look different from yours. And it's not that your practice is wrong. It's just different because your values and your morals are based on what's important to you as an individual, where each individual has those things, right? So I personally believe that our spiritual practices and wellness is the most important and critical part to us becoming who God created us to be. So when you are having your spiritual practice and your spiritual wellness is taken care of, not only are you in tune with God, but you're in tune with yourself, which essentially, to me, in my opinion, is one and the same. Because when you take time to go within, you're taking time to go within and connect with the God that's within you, right? So if you have this daily practice, the more you tap in, the more you have this practice, it allows you to build a stronger intuition, gain wisdom, you get more spiritual downloads, and you're able to hear God quicker because you have this practice that has made you accustomed to hearing the voice of God, if you will. I think that shows up different for everybody too. Sometimes the voice of God is actually a voice. For some people, it's signs and synchronicities. For some people, it's numbers and things in nature, butterflies, whatever that may be for you. The more you ground yourself, you take the time to go within and ground yourself, shall I say, the more you're able to have that, I'm drawing blank of the word. You have a a quicker response to hearing because you've taken the time to connect however you choose to acknowledge that, right? So I feel like once we have that spiritual practice and we are able to go within and we connect to the God that is within us, we get more guidance and we become more secure with who we are and more confident in where our journey is taking us, right? And then when life happens and you get those curveballs or you get blindsided by something you did not see coming, your foundation and your roots are so strong that you're not easily swayed because your spiritual practice has built up that muscle, right? So I think it's important to have that because life is going to life. One thing I've learned in life is that it's going to life, and you have to have the resiliency to bounce back and not lose focus of the goal and what it is that you're put here for. And of course that is revealed more and more as you go through your journey and you have your spiritual practice. However, I do believe that God gives us insight for the season that we're in. We may not have the full picture, but we know what we if we take the time to tap in, we know what we need to do in this moment. And sometimes what we need to do is just practice stillness. Sometimes it's not actively doing something. Sometimes it's just simply being and being present in the now and taking the steps as they're given to us, because that's conditioning of your faith and as well. Because if you just get the whole plan, then you're not really tested, the same, I'll say. You're not tested in a way that teaches you to rely on intuition, spirit, God, higher self to lead and guide you. So sometimes there's seasons where you may not have the answer, and it's not until you just take time to be still that God will give you the next step. You may not get the next 5, but you get that small little step that you need to do. And it could be something as simple as wake up early today and walk. And you may not know why you got that in your inkling, in your spirit, but you get up and you go walk. And then when you take that step, then something else is brought to you to help you down that spiritual journey, right? So, it varies, but it is definitely important to get up and have a practice, whatever that may look like. And there's different ways that there's different types of spiritual practices, right? So I have a list that I am going to read because I think it's important to know that our spiritual practice doesn't have to fit in a box, right? And I struggle with that myself. Like, I feel like if I don't get up and do it the same way every day, that it's not as beneficial. But sometimes there's a seasons of flow where you could it'll look different every day. And you just follow the inkling of your spirit of what brings you that closeness and makes you feel more grounded. So some things can be meditation, chanting, prayer, fellowshipping at your local church or spiritual center, going out in nature and just walking, putting your feet in the ground, putting your feet in the grass, therapy, dancing, yoga, journaling, traveling, volunteering. And it's like you could really call a spiritual practice anything that nourishes your soul and brings you further into alignment with yourself and the calling that God has in your life, right? And I think it's important that we acknowledge that not only will our spiritual practice look different for us, depending on the season and where we are, but it can look different for other people. And there is no right or wrong. There is no one size fits all. And sometimes we could look at what somebody else is doing and see how God is manifesting things in their life and feel like, oh, we got to do it like that, and don't get the same results. And then we feel like, okay, well, maybe there's something wrong with us. Maybe we're not worthy. Maybe we're not deserving. Whatever it is that critical voice is telling you. But it could be nothing to do with that. It's just simply that you and your spirit, that does nothing for you, right? And I think we can look at that when we look at the differences of religion, right? So it's just like one religion may feel like this is how you connect with God, and this is how you pray, and this is how you honor and reverence God. And then another religion have a whole different way. And it's like, I know when I was studying and looking at different things, because I would always ask myself when I was practicing Christianity and just focus on that avenue or that journey, I was just kind of like, well, if I'm praying like this and God is blessing me, then how is it that this person that's in a whole nother walk of faith, belief system, is praying and getting similar, if not same, or better results in their lives? And then it just didn't sit right with me, I guess you would say, to see how things were so different. And it really wasn't until I went to Hawaii. I went to Hawaii and I went to the Polynesian Cultural Center, and my best friend took me there. And we went and they were doing all these different rituals based off of each island and how they worship the divine, right? And I remember sitting in each of these ceremonies and feeling the presence of God. First of all, Hawaii just felt like God lived on the island, on Oahu. Like, that's the island I was on. I felt like God was living there. The whole island just felt serene. But when I went to each little ceremony of where they were showing what happens in each culture, I was just like, I felt the same presence of God that I would feel when I go to, my church, home church at the time, or any church for that matter, where, I will fall out and just praise and worship, right? And it was just like, I remember looking at my best friend and I was like, Pooh, I know what they say about, from a Christian perspective, how, this is the only way, but I feel the presence of God here the same way that I feel the presence of God in church. And she was just kind of like, well, Buddha, trust it and kind of explore it, right? And so that led me on my spiritual journey of like kind of being open to experiencing God in different environments and different places, and it not having to be this cookie cutter way of experiencing God. And I think sometimes, in my personal opinion, when we do that, we put limits on God. And one of the things I would always hear is take the limits off of God. And it was just like, I really started looking at things like, we put limits on God within different religious beliefs, because you're saying this is the only way that God can operate and this is the only way that God shows up. And so for me, that was the beginning journey for me to explore and study and really get in tune and talk to God and ask God for guidance for me in my spiritual journey. So I'm not just talking to you about something that I didn't experience myself. And me personally, which I have a series on this that I'll touch on and go in depth later, is that I really felt free once I took the limits off of God, once I looked for different ways to experience Him. And I feel like my spiritual journey has flourished because it opened me up to experience Him, it, her, however you identify, in different ways, right? And so it's been a beautiful experience, However, I'm not going to say that I still don't have questions, because I do. I'm just naturally curious about exploring different things and how, things show up. But the best, I guess, answer that my ego can come up with, and maybe, and I say ego in the sense of like my logical brain, is that there are no limits. There is no right or wrong. There is no way better than the other. It's what each individual soul needs. And that will vary depending on that individual. Yoga may not do nothing for you, but yoga can bring other people into alignment with their bodies, their souls, and their minds, and they thrive in it. I want to try yoga. It's very uncomfortable for me. I like it, but it's uncomfortable. So it's not something that I look like, oh yeah, I want to do. But I think it's uncomfortable because it's new and it's foreign. But, I will dabble in it, just a little sidebar. But it's something that I feel led to do and do consistently. and I just need to get the discipline and the commitment to do it. But like I said, it could just spiritual practice can look different for everybody. And what may work for you may not work for the next person, and what works for them may not work for you, and that's okay. Nobody's wrong. It's really about how it draws you closer to self and to God. Because, like I said, I believe that the closer you are to knowing yourself, the closer you are to God, because we are all each individualized expressions of God. And each person can bring a different perspective or experience of God, honestly, through conversation or the way they live their lives. And it's just, it's infinite. God is infinite. So human beings are going to be infinite, and they're all going to look different and show up different. And it's just so beautiful. So I'm going to get off of that because I can stay on that in awe for a long time. Because it's like, man, like, it's just like when you really think about it from that perspective, it's like each opportunity that you get to meet somebody that's different from you, it essentially gives you another experience of God if you're open to it. A lot of times people will reject certain things or people because it doesn't look like how they identify God or how they've been taught to identify God. And then you just have this real narrow perspective. And that's why I love to hear different thoughts, different belief systems, because I feel like the foundation of everything is the same. It's just different ways of doing it. And each thing is a tool. You know, these are different tools of how to connect with God. And sometimes some people just connect with God with just being still and sitting in silence. And there is no chanting. There is no, binaural beats and things playing in the background. It's just, they just feel the presence of God in any and everything that they do. And that's their guiding systems. For some people, it's astrology. Some people feel like astrology isn't of God. However, and this is the best way to say it, because I can stay on this soapbox for a long time. So the best way I can say that is, I believe that God will connect with each individual in the way that they will recognize it. Meaning, if God knows that I can't come to you through the Christian faith, and I can connect with you through the Buddhist faith, then that's how God is going to show up for you. If the next person feels like I can go outside and be out in nature and God is going to come and talk to me, then that's how God is going to show up for you. If, I don't know, dancing, because that's on the list as a form of spiritual practice. If dancing, tribal dancing or regular dancing, however they choose to express their body or move their body through expression, and they feel like that's where I can meet God at, then that's where God is going to meet them. I believe that God, this divine spirit, will meet each individual where they are. So even when it comes to atheists, it is my belief that they may not recognize God in the sense that a Christian may or Muslim may, and may not have a specific name, but God knows how to show up for them and be able to lead them and guide them, whether that's through their logic, whether that's through numbers and science, whatever it is, God will show up through that, because essentially any and everything comes from God. So there is no limits. God is going to show up for each individual spiritual practice, spiritual journey, for how that soul needs it to. And you just have to tap into that practice, and God is going to lead you and guide you. That's my personal opinion. No, it can be a little far-fetched for some, but that's how much I've taken the limits off God for me and myself, for understanding other people in their journey. So, to wrap up, we're going to get into some of the benefits of spiritual practice. Like I mentioned, it connects us to spirit, and it helps us get grounded and tap into divine wisdom and navigate life's journey. 2, it assists us on our personal journey of self-discovery and live more in alignment with our higher self, and essentially leads us to our purpose or purposes, because I don't believe we have one purpose. Some people have one purpose. They knew since they were kids what they wanted to be. And I feel like some people have different purposes depending on the season of where they are, right? And then I also believe that it builds our security and foundation from within, and be grounded within spirit and not of things of this world. So if you lose your house, your car, your kids, Lord forbid, or your spouse, it doesn't mean that it's not painful and it doesn't hurt, but your foundation isn't built upon it where it takes you out, where it causes you not to feel like life is worthy. And one of the people that I think about when I think about things like that is Job from the Bible. He was tested in many ways, and God basically told the devil in the story that you can do everything but take his life. So the devil did just that, did everything but take his life. But Job's dedication and faith to God was so deep and so strong that it never caused him to lose his footing. And I'm not saying that he didn't have humanistic thoughts. I'm sure he did. He's human, right? But at the end of the day, he kept his faith and God rewarded him for that faith, right? It also helps, having a spiritual practice helps us have deeper, meaningful relationships with self and others. The closer we get with ourselves, the easier it is for us to get closer to others and develop our bonds, because we have a better understanding of ourselves. When you know your values, your morals, the things that define who you are, it makes it easier to align with people who edify that, who helps you become more in alignment with who you are and encourage you. They see you. So it's like the more you see yourself and the more you peel back the layers of yourself, the more other people can see you and be able to connect to that. And then last but not least, it helps you live more from a place of love and not fear, which to me equals security, right? Because when we're in fear, that's where the anxiety, the depression, the worrying, sickness, illness, and disease can show up in our body, because we're living in fear. Things just keep happening for us because we're living from this, what I consider low vibrational energy. Fear is low vibrational. And from that, because there's only two emotions in life that springs from everything, or everything springs from, shall I say. You have love and you have fear. When you are in fear, that's where all of the, what I would call shadow emotions, because I don't like to use the word negative, but that's what we would call it, in our culture most times, is negative emotions. They come from fear, so therefore it's lowering our vibration. So we don't feel as confident, we don't feel as secure, we don't feel as safe. And that then dictates how we move and how we show up in the world. Whereas when we live in love, we have faith, we have confidence, we know that whatever is happening in our lives is helping us and shaping us for the highest and greatest good. It doesn't mean that we don't experience pain and all the other emotions that come from it, come from life trials and tribulations, but we resonate and stand in love and move in love. So therefore, we're emitting this frequency, this vibration that then brings back good things to us. So it's kind of like, you sow what you reap. So if you, I don't know if y'all seen that meme, it just popped up in my head, where it's like two people on a bus, and it's like the one person that is having control of his thinking, and he's thinking positive. He's looking out the window and everything is bright and sunny. And then the guy who is like in negative energy and he's just, woe is me, it's just like everything is dark and gloomy on his side of the bus. And that's how we go through life. So people who are and I guess you got the people that's in between, that they see the realists, they see things for what they are. And I think it's good to have a balance. However, I think it's more to it's best to see the glass half full than half empty, because when we see it half full, it's inspiration or hope that something better is coming. Whereas you feel like it's half empty, then that feels like you're losing, and that's when scarcity comes in, and then you move into that vibration of that there's not enough, and there's enough of everything for every individual on this earth, because God is a God of abundance. So I feel like I got off topic a little bit, however, or went down a rabbit hole a little bit. However, spiritual wellness is just so important, and however you choose to do it, like I said, however that resonates with your spiritual journey or your faith, it's important that we have it, because it builds our muscles. It gives us guidance and wisdom, and what I call spiritual downloads. Like, you just get in your spirit like, oh, I need to do this. And you may not even understand why you got that, but that's guidance from the divine telling you, take this step, move here, don't go that way. And it's a blessing in it. And the more we have that spiritual practice, the better we can hear and we can make decisions. And that doesn't mean that our decisions are going to turn out the way that we hoped, because even when things don't go the way that we want them to, they're still leading us to where we're supposed to go. So, you can't, it reminds me of the NDRE song that there are no right or wrong choices. They're just chances that we take. But any chance or choice that you make is leading you for a lesson that your soul needs. And it may not turn out the way you want it to, or the way you envision it, because Lord knows that has been my life. And I think it's because one of my lessons in life is to learn how to go with the flow and release control. So it's like I've had plans of how things were going to go, and they didn't go nothing like I thought they were going to go. However, there were blessings in those setbacks or detours that actually have been blessings to me for years and has contributed to who I am. So it's just, when you have that spiritual practice and you open your eyes to be able to experience and see things, what looks like a setback, you can actually see as a setup. You can actually see, what can I learn from this and take from this? And I think that comes from spiritual practice, because that comes with spiritual practice gives you wisdom. So with that being said, I hope that something throughout this episode inspires you to revamp your spiritual practice, start a new spiritual practice, or start a spiritual practice, because at the end of the day, we're all on a journey, and sometimes we get comfortable in our spiritual practice and we, don't really revamp it or try something new to stretch our spirits. And it's important that we do. I think it's always important to have a level of awareness of, am I doing this because it's a habit, or am I doing this because it's actually feeding my soul and helping me become or move more into alignment with the life that I want and I desire. I hope that something inspires you to revamp and seek Spirit, God, and ask, how can you get closer to God, or how can I get closer to myself, and implement something new. Challenge yourself, challenge your spirit to try something that's out of the norm, because our comfort zone, it can maintain us, but it doesn't help us thrive and grow. And spiritual practice should help you thrive and grow, not just exist. It's good to maintain, don't get me wrong. Some seasons are for maintaining, but there are also seasons for growth and expansion as well. So I thank you for listening. And yet again, share your thoughts in the comments about your spiritual practice, or what you found that was key from this episode. And I look forward to talking with you next week when we jump into week 2 of the Bloom series. Have a blessed week.